Chapter 5 of the Nightland by William Hope Hodgson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Nightland. Chapter 5 Into the Nightland. Now, after that destruction which had come upon the 10,000, and the fresh assurance that was upon us of the terror of the Nightland, it may be known that there could be no more thought to succour, though, in truth, those youths that went now upon the road where the Silent Ones walk were far beyond our aid. Yet might it be thought that we should have signalled to them, calling by the home call, which was that great voice which went forth from the machine above the sealed base of the mighty pyramid. But this we might not do, for then we gave signal to the monsters of that land that some were even now abroad from the pyramid. Yet we could no more than hope that the evil forces had no wotting of them, for in verity none might ever know the knowledge or the ignorance which those powers did possess. Yet it must be kept to the mind that we knew even then there was an influence abroad in the land, strange and quiet, so that the instruments did not more than make record of it. And as I have surely set down ere now, we had belief that it did come from that house of silence afar in the Nightland, upon that low hill to the north of the great road. And many among the Monstruacans feared that it was directed upon the youths, but of this there could be no surety, and we could but wait and watch. Now about this time those poor youths did draw nigh to that part of the road where the Silent Ones walk, where it turned more swiftly to the north, and they to be now at no mighty distance from that grim and horrid house. And presently we knew that the influence had a greater power in the land, and I had an assuredness that it came from the house, yet no certain proof was this. But I set out my feelings to the Master Monstruacan, and he had trust in them and in my power. Moreover, he also had belief within himself that some secret power came out from the House of Silence. And some talk there was at times that we send the home call into the night, to give warning to the youths of our knowledge and our fear, and to entreat them to make a safe endeavour to return swiftly. Yet this was an error, and refused by the Master Monstruacan, for it was not meet that we put the souls of those youths in peril until such time as we had certainty that they should be lost if we did not bestir ourselves. For indeed this home call was a mighty voice, calling over the world, and did have so exceeding a noise, that it had immediately told all that land how that some were yet abroad from the great redoubt. And here will I set down how that home call had no use in those ages, but we had a call in the olden time when yet the great flying ships went abroad over the world. And there passed now a day and a night, and in all that time there ceased not great multitudes to peer forth into the Nightland at the youths. For it was known concerning the influence, and all felt that the youths did draw nigh very speedy to their fate, and much talk there was, and many things said, and much foolish speech, and kind intent, but no courage to go forth to make further attempt to rescue, which in truth calls not for great astonishment, as I have surely writ or oft thought. And in this place let me set down that the land was, as it might be said, waked and unquiet, and a sense of things passing in the night, and of horrid watchfulness. And there were, at this time and at that, low roars that went across the land. And if I have not told the same before this time, it must be set to count against me and my telling, for indeed I should have writ it down before this place. Yet is the difficulty of my task great, and all must bear with me, and entreat for me that I have courage, so that I may come at last to strength and wisdom to tell all that I did see. Now in the space of this day and night it was known that the youths had not slept, neither had they eaten, save once, as they who had the watch through the great spyglass did affirm. But they to hasten alway at a woeful speed towards the north, along that great dismal road, so that presently they must cease, or slay themselves with their endeavour. And all this did give surety to our fears that they were under a spell from that horrid house afar in the land. And we had an assurance that this thing was. For presently there came a Monstruaken to the Master Monstruaken to report that there had come suddenly a mighty influence into the land, and in the same moment, as it might be, I spied through the great spyglass and did see those youths break swiftly from the road where the Silent Ones walk, and begin to run very swift that they might come quickly to the House of Silence. Then did the Master Monstruaken hesitate not, but did send the home call across the world, aye, even to those poor doomed ones that hastened unknowing to the terror which did compel them. And immediately upon the sound the Master did send a message to the natural eye in set language, and made warning that they suffered themselves to be drawn to their destruction by a force that came from within the House of Silence. And he besought them to put forth the strength of their spirits and do battle for their souls, and if they could in no wise compass a victory over that which drew them onwards, to slay themselves quickly ere they went into that house to the horror of utter destruction. And in all the pyramid was there a great silence, for the bellowing of the home call bred a quietness, because of that which it did portend. And it was swiftly known by the millions that the Master Monstruaken did plead for the souls of the youths, and there went forth unknowingly a counterforce from the mighty pyramid, by reason of the prayers and soul-wishings of the countless millions. And the counterforce was plain to my inward hearing, and beat all the ether of the world into a surge of supplication, so that it stunned my spirit with the great power of it. And it seemed to me, as it were, that there was a vast spiritual noise in all the night, and I spied tremblingly through the great spyglass, and lo, the youths did cease from their swift running, and were come together in a crowd, and had a seeming to be confused, as might some who have waked suddenly from sleep, to find that they walked in their sleep and had come to a strange place. Then came there a great roar from all the millions that spied from the embrasures, from nigh 500,000 embrasures they did look, and I count not the great view-tables. And the shouting rose up to the roaring of a mighty wind of triumph, yet was it over early to sound for victory. For the counterforce which came from the intensity of so many wills blent to one intent was brake, and the evil force which came forth out of the house did draw the youths again, so that they heeded not their salvation, but turned once again to their running. And the mighty pyramid was full of a shaken silence, and immediately of lamentation and sorrow and horror at this thing. But in that moment there did happen a fresh wonder, for there grew suddenly before those poor youths billows of mist, as if it had been of pure white fire, shining very chill, yet giving no light upon them. And the mist of cold fire stayed their way, so that we had knowledge that there fought for the souls of them one of those sweet powers of goodness, which we had belief did strive to ward our spirits at all times from those forces of evil and destruction. And all the millions saw the thing, but some with a great clearness, and many doubtful, yet were all advanced more in spiritual sight and hearing than the normal peoples of this age. But of them all none had the night-hearing, to know a soul having speech in the ether half across the world. Yet, as I have said, some there had been aforetime who were thus given the hearing, even as was I. And there came a Monstruaken to the Master Monstruaken to make report that the influence had ceased to work upon the instruments, and by this thing we knew that in verity the force which proceeded out from the House of Silence was cut off from us, and from those youths. And we had assurance that there fought a very mighty power for the salvation of the souls of the youths. And all the peoples were silent, save for an underbreath of wonder and talk, for all were utter stirred with hope and fear, perceiving that the youths had some chance given unto them to return. And whilst the youths yet wavered in their minds, as I perceived with the great spyglass, and the knowledge of my soul, and of my natural wit, lo, the master Monstrawaken sent once more the great voice of the home call abroad into the land, and immediately besought those youths for the sake of their souls and the love which their mothers had for them, to come swiftly homewards, whilst they had yet this great power to shield them and allow them sweet sanity. And I thought that some did look towards the pyramid, as that they answered to the mighty voice of the home call, and did read the message which the master Monstrawaken made to them. But in a moment they faced about, seeming to have a good obedience to one who did always lead, and of whom I had inquired, and found to be one named Ashoff, who was a great athlete of the 900th city. And this same Ashoff, out of the boldness and bravery of his heart, did make unwitting to destroy the souls of them all, for he went forward and leapt into the billows of the bright shining fire that made a barrier in the way of their destruction. And immediately the fire ceased from its shining, and gave way and sank and grew to a nothingness, and Ashoff of the 900th city began again to run towards the House of Silence, and all they that were with him did follow faithfully, and ceased not to run. And they came presently to the low hill whereon was that horrid house, and they went up swiftly, and they were 250, and wholesome of heart and innocent, save for a natural waywardness of spirit. And they came to the great open doorway that hath been open since the beginning, and through which the cold steadfast light and the inscrutable silence of evil hath made for ever a silence that may be felt in all the land. And the great uncased windows gave out the silence and the light, aye, the utter silence of an unholy desolation. And Ashoff ran in through the great doorway of silence, and they that followed, and they never more came out or were seen by any human. And it must be known that the mothers and the fathers of those youths looked out into the Nightland and saw that thing which came to pass. And all the people were silent, but some said presently that the youths would come forth again. Yet the people knew in their hearts that the young men had gone in to destruction, for in truth there was that in the night which spoke horror to the souls of all, and a sudden utter quiet in all the land. But unto me, that had the night hearing, there came a great fear of that which might be whispered into my spirit, out of the quietness of the night, of the agony of those young men. Yet there came no sound to the hearing of the soul, neither then nor in all the years that were to come, for in verity had those youths passed into a silence of which the heart cannot think. And here will I tell how that the strange quiet which did fill all the land, seeming to brood within the night, was horrid beyond all the roarings which had passed over the darkness in the time that went before, so that it had given my spirit some rest and assurance to hear but the far echoing, low thunder of the great laughter, or the whining which was used at times to sound in the night from the south-east, where were the silver fire holes that open before the thing that nods, or the baying of the hounds, or the roaring of the giants, or any of those dreadful sounds that did often pass through the night. For they could not have offended me as did that time of silence, and so shall you judge how dreadful was that quiet, which did hold so much of horror. And surely it will be known that none had thinkings now, even in idle speech, that any should have power to succour the peoples of the Lesser Redoubt. Neither, as I have said, had any the knowledge of the place where it did stand. And so it was made plain that those peoples must suffer and come unhelped and alone to their end, which was a sad and dreadful thought to any. Yet had those within the Great Pyramid come already to much sorrow and calamity because that some who had made attempt in this matter. And there had been for gain only failure and the sorrow of mothers, and the loneliness of wives and of kin. And now this dread horror upon us, which concerned those lost youths. Now, as may be conceived, this sure knowledge that we might give no succour to the people of the Lesser Redoubt weighed heavy upon my heart. For I had, maybe with foolishness, held vague hopes and wonders concerning our power to make expedition secretly into the night, to discover that lesser pyramid and rescue those poor thousands. And above all, as may be thought, had I the thought of that sweet moment in which I would step forward out of the night and all mystery and terror and put forth mine arms to Nanni, saying, "I am that one." And knowing in my soul that she that had been mine in that bygone eternity should surely know me upon the instant, and call out swiftly and come swiftly, and be again unto me in that age, even as she had been in this. And to think upon it, and to know that this thing should never be, but that even in that moment of thought she that had been mine in these olden days of sweetness might be even then suffering horror in the power of some foul monster, was like a kind of madness, so that nearly I could seize the discos and run forth unprepared into the evil and terror of the Nightland, that I should make one attempt to come to that place where she abode, or else to cast off my life in the attempt. And oft did I call to Nanni, and always I sent the master-word beating through the night, that she might have assurance that it was indeed I that did speak unto her spirit, and no foul thing or monster, spelling evil and lies unto her. And oft did I make to instruct her that never should she be tempted forth from the shelter of that redoubt in which she did live, by any message out of the night, but always to await the master-word, and, moreover, to have a sure knowledge that none that was her friend would ever seek to entice her into the night. And this way and that way would I speak with Nanni, sending my words silently with my brain elements. Yet was it doleful and weariful and dreadful always to have speech into the dark, and never to hear the answering beat of the master-word, and the sweet, faint voice whispering within my soul. Yet once and again would I have knowledge that the ether did thrill about me, weakly, and to mine inward hearing it would seem that the master-word did beat faintly in the night, and thereafter would my heart have a little comfort, in that I had assurance of a kind that the love-maid of my memory dreams did still live. And constant I put forth my soul to hark, so that my health failed me, with the effort of my harking, and I would chide my being that I had not a wiser control, and so make a fight to do sanely. Yet day by day did my heart grow more weary and restless, for indeed it did seem that life was but a very little matter against so great a loss as my heart did feel to suffer. And oft, at this time and that, did there come a voice speaking plainly out of the night, and did purport to be the voice of Nanni. But ever I did say the master-word unto the voice, and the voice had no power by which it could make the one answer. Yet I jeered not at the voice, to show contempt of its failing to bewit me. But let the matter bide, and the voice would be silent a time, and again would make a calling unto me, but never did I make speech with it, for therein lies the danger to the soul, but always did speak the master-word to its silencing, and thereafter would shut the thing from my memory, and think only upon sweet and holy matters, as it might be truth and courage, but more often of Nanni, which was both sweet and holy to my spirit and heart and being. And so it was as I have set down, there were monsters without in the night that did torment me, having, it may be, intent to lure me unto destruction, or indeed it doth chance that they had no hope but to plague me with malice. And, as may be thought, all this considering of my trouble, and the giving of my strength unto Nanni through the night of the world, that she might have comfort and help, did work upon me, so that I grew thin, plainly to the eye of those who loved me. And the master Monstruaken, he that did love me, as I were his son, chid me gently, and had wise speech with me, so that I but loved him the more, yet without having gain of health. For my heart destroyed me, as it doth if love be held back and made always to weep. and it may be thought strange that my mother and my father did not talk also with me, but I had neither mother nor father those many years, and this thing I should have set down early, so that none should waste thought pondering to no end. But the blame is to my telling. Now concerning my love trouble there did happen a certain thing which gave me to decide. For one night I waked from a sore troubled sleep, and it did seem that Nanni did call my name, mine olden love name, and in a voice of utter anguish and with beseeching. And I sat up in the bed and set the master word into the night, with my brain elements, and presently all about me there was the solemn beat of the master word answering, but weak and gone faint that scarce I might hear it. And I called again with my brain elements unto Nanni that was Murdath, and spoke to give her assurance, and to haste to tell unto me that which was so wrong and pitiful with her. And who shall be amazed that I was shaken with the eagerness of my spirit, in that it was so long since Nanni had spoken clear within my soul, and now behold her voice. Yet though I did call many a time unto the everlasting night, there came no more the voice of Nanni speaking strangely within my spirit, but only at times a weak thrilling of the ether about me. And at the last I grew maddened with the sorrow of this thing, and the sense and knowledge of harm about the maid. And I stood upright upon my feet, and I raised my hands, and gave word and honour unto Nanni through all the blackness of the night, that I would no more abide within the mighty pyramid to my safety, whilst she, that had been mine own through eternity, came to horror and destruction by the beasts and evil powers of that dark world. And I gave the word with my brain elements, and bade her to be of heart, for that until I died I would seek her. But out of the darkness there came naught but the silence. Then I clothed me swiftly, and went up quickly to the tower of observation, that I might speak instant with the master Monstruaken, for my heart burned in me to intention, and to be doing speedily that which I had set upon myself to do. And I came to the master Monstruaken, and told all to him, and how that I did mean no more to suffer in quiet and to no end, but to make adventure into the Nightland, that I find Nanni, or perchance find a swift peace from this my long troubling. Now when the master Monstruaken heard that which I had to say, it sat heavily upon him, and he besought me long and many times that I refrain from this thing, for that none might achieve so great a task, but that I should be lost in my youth before many days were gone by. Yet to all this speech I said naught, save that this thing was laid upon me, and even as I had promised, so should I make to act. And in the ending the master Monstruaken perceived that I was set to this thing, and not to be moved, and he did put to me how that I had grown to leanness with so much troubling, and that I should have wisdom to wait a while, that I put on my full strength. But even as I was, so would I go, and this I told to him gently, and showed how that the thing was meet and helpful to the safety of my soul. For that my strength was still in me, yet was I sweeter in spirit, because that I stood lean and pure, and much poor dross and littleness had been burned from me, so that fear was not in me. And all do I lay to the count of my love, which doth purify and make sweet and fearless the human heart. And because I was even as I have said, so was I the less in trouble of the forces of evil, for long and sore had been my preparation of spirit, and I wot that none had ever gone forth into the darkness, so long withholden from that which doth weaken and taint the spirit. And here let me set down how that the 3 days of preparation, which were proper to those that will to go forth into the Nightland, had for their chief aim the cleansing of the spirit, so that the powers of evil did have a less ableness to harm. But also it was, as I have said, that none should go forth in ignorance of the full dreadfulness of all that held the night. For it was at the preparation that there was made known certain horrors that were not told unto the young, and of horrid mutilations, and of abasements of the soul, that did shake the heart with fear, if but they were whispered into the hearing. And these things were not set down in any book that might be lightly come by, but were warded and safe locked by the master of the preparation in the room of preparation. And indeed, when I did hear that which presently I was to hear, I had wonder in my heart that ever any went out into the Nightland, or that ever the room of preparation should have other than students that meant not to go forth, but only to achieve some knowledge of that which hath been done, and mayhaps shall be once again. Yet in verity is this but the way of the human heart, and hath always been, and will be so in all the years for ever. For to adventure is the lust of youth, and to leave safety is the natural waywardness of the spirit, and who shall reprove or regret? For it were sorrowful that this spirit of man should cease. Yet must it not be thought that I do uphold fightings to the death or to mutilation between man and man, but rather do sorrow upon this thought. Now when the morrow came, if thus I shall speak of that which was outwardly even as the night, though changing alway within the mighty pyramid, I went unto the room of preparation, and the door was closed upon me, and I underwent the full preparation, that I might have full power and aid to come to success through all the terror of the Nightland. And 3 days and 3 nights did I abide within the room of preparation, and upon the 4th day was mine armour brought unto me, and the master of preparation stood away from me, silent and with sorrow upon his face, but touching me not, neither coming anigh to aid me, nor having any speech with me, for none might crowd upon me or cause me to answer. And presently I was clad with the grey armour, and below the armour a close-knit suit of special shaping and texture, to have the shape of the armour, and that I might not die by the cold of the Nightland. And I placed upon me a scrip of food and drink, that might keep the life within me for a great time, by reason of its preparation. And this lay ready to me with the armour, and was stitched about with the mark of honour, so that I knew loving women thus to speed me. And when all was done and made ready, I took up the discos, and bowed in silence to the master of the preparation, and he went towards the door and opened it, and signalled that the people stand back, so that I might go forth untouched. And the people stood back, for many had crowded to the door of the room of preparation, so that I knew how that my story must be to the heart of all, in all the cities of the great redoubt, for to come unbidden anigh that door was against the lesser law, and that any erred in this matter betokened much. And I went out through the door, and there was a mighty lane of people unto the great lift. And about the great lift, as I went downwards, did the countless millions stand, and all in a great silence, but having dear sympathy in their souls, yet loyal unto my safety, in that none in all the mighty pyramid did make speech unto me or call me aught. And as I went downward through the miles, lo, all the ether of the world seemed to be surged with the silent prayers and speedings of those quiet multitudes. And I came at last unto the great gate, and behold the dear Master Monstrawaken did stand in full armour, and with the discos, to do me honour with the full watch as I went forth. And I looked at him quietly, and he looked unto me, and I bent my head to show respect, and he made silent salute with the discos, and afterwards I went onwards towards the great gateway. And they made dim the lights in the great causeway, that there should be no glare go forth into the land when the gate was opened. And behold, they opened not the lesser gate within the greater for me, but did honour my journey, in that they swung wide the great gate itself, through which a monstrous army might pass. And there was an utter silence all about the gate, and in the hushed light the 2,000 that made the full watch held up each the discos silently, to make salute, and humbly I held up the discos reversed, and went forward into the dark. End of chapter 5. Chapter 6 of the Nightland by William Hope Hodgson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Nightland. Chapter 6 The Way That I Did Go. Now I went forward for a space, and took heed not to look backwards, but to be strong of heart and spirit, for that which did lie before me had need of all my manhood and courage of soul, that I come to the succour of that maid afar in the darkness of the world, or meet my death proper, as it might need to be. And thus did I go forward steadfastly, and conscious in all my being of the emotions of that parting from my mighty home, and of the tenderness and wiseness that did underlie so much curbed rule and guidance. And my heart was warm towards the Master Monstruaken for that great honour, that he should come downward in armour to make one with the full watch, that he might uphold me to a lofty spirit at the moment of my going. And all the time as I went forward, as the ether of the night about me, in tumult with the thoughts and blind wishings of the great millions I had but now left to my back. And presently, as I steadied somewhat upon my emotions, I was conscious of the exceeding coldness of the night air, and of the different taste of it upon my lungs and in the mouth, and it had, as it were, a wondrous keen sharping upon my palate, and it filled the lips more in the breathing, so that it may be supposed it had more body within it than that air which did fill the plateau of the 1000th city where was my home, for the air of every city was of difference, and the greater between one that was afar up and another nigh to the earth, as may be thought, so that many peoples did migrate unto that level which gave them best healthfulness, but under rule and with the guidance of quantities, and not all that were lacking of health, for some are ever contrary. And here let me set down that within the deeps of the fields there was air utter, varied, and wonderful, that might charm one here, and likewise sorrow another that were happier elsewhere, so that all might have suiting, did they but wander, and have reason to companion them. And thus did I go forward, full of new thoughts and olden memories, and fresh breaking wonders, neither forgetting something of doubts and fears more than a little. And again it was most cunning strange to be out there in the Nightland, though not yet afar, where often had my fancies and imaginings led me, yet until that time never had I touched foot in all that life upon the outward earth. And this must be a wondrous quaint seeming thought to those of this present day. And so came I at last nigh to the circle that did go about the redoubt, and presently I was come to it, and something astonished was I that it had no great bigness, for I had looked for this by reasoning, having always a mind to picture things as they might be truly, and hence coming sometimes to the wonder of a great truth, but odd whiles to errors that others had not made. And now, lo, I did find it but a small clear tube that had not 2 inches of thickness, yet sent out a very bright and strong light, so that it seemed greater to the eye, did one but behold from a distance. And this is but a little thing to set to the telling, yet may it give something of the newness of all, and moreover shall you have memory with me in this place, how that oft I had seen things and beast monsters peer over that same little tube of light, their faces coming forward out of the night. And this had I seen as child and man, for as children we did use to keep oft a watch by hours upon an holiday time, through the great glasses of the embrasures, and we did always hope each to be that one that should first discover a monster looking inwards upon the mighty pyramid, across the shining of the circle, and these to come oft, yet presently to slink away into the night, having, in verity, no liking for that light. And pride had we taken of ourselves to perceive those monsters which had most of ugliness and horror to commend them, for thereby did we stand to have won the game of watching, until such time as a more fearsome brute be discovered. And so went the play, yet with ever it doth seem to me now something of a half-known shudder to the heart, and a child's rejoicing unknowingly in that safety which had power to make light the seeming of such matters. And this also is but a small matter, yet doth it bear upon the inwardness of my feelings. For the memories of all my youth and of the many beasts that I had seen to peer across the light did come upwards in my mind in that moment, so that I did give back a little, unthinking of what I did, but having upon me the sudden imagining of that which might come out of the dark beyond. And I to stand a little moment, and presently had grown free in my heart to have courage of farewell, and so did turn me at last to the viewing of that wondrous home of the last millions of this world. And the sight was an astonishment and an uplifting, that indeed there was so mighty a thing in all the earth. And well might be that there were monsters and forces gathered together about that hill of life, out of all the darkness of the world, for the thing was as mighty mountain that went up measureless into the night, and spread out upon the earth to the right and to the left of me, so that it did seem to hold all the world with its might. And in the nearer slope were there 300,000 great embrasures, as well I did know, there being in all the four sides of the redoubt 1,200,000 embrasures, as was set out in the books of the schools, and upon the cover of the Atlas books, as they still quaintly to be called, and many another place as might be supposed. And half a mile upward was the lowest tier of those great window-places, and above that countless other tiers. And a great light came out from them into the darkness, so that I looked up into the night many miles, and yet did see them in shining rows, and did make separate each embrasure from its fellow for a great way. But there grew yet more above in the mighty distance, so that they were lost in the upward space of the night, and did seem to me presently but as a constant glimmering fire, that did shape a shining peak into the blackness of the heavens, dwindling into the utmost height. And thus was that everlasting monument. Then did it come to me that those little things, which I did see to cluster against the embrasures, were in truth the countless millions of the mighty redoubt. And this I could make out with some plainness in those lower embrasures, which were more near to me than they above, for the peoples were set against the light within, yet were as small things, like unto insects, in that distance, and within so huge a bulk. And I knew that they looked out upon me, and did watch through their spy-glasses. And I set my gaze upwards again along that great slope of grey metal, aye, upward again to where it strode glimmering into the blackness, and so at last to the little star that did crown that wonder of the world in the eternal night. And for a little I did stare towards that far light, for it came from within that tower of observation, where so lately I had spended my life, and I had knowledge within my heart that the dear Master Monstruaken did bend the great spy-glass upon me, through which so oft had I spied, and I raised the discos unto him in salutation and farewell, though I saw him not at all through that vast space. And my heart was very full, yet my soul but the stronger for it. And then, behold, I was aware of a murmur in the night, coming to me, dim and from afar off, and I saw the little shapes of the peoples in the lower embrasures, in constant movement, and I knew upon the instant that the multitudes did take that salute unto themselves, and cried out and waved to me their farewells, or to come back as may be. And, indeed, I was but a lonesome person looking up at that great mountain of metal and life, and I knew that I had danger to realize my plight, and I stayed no more, but did raise the discos reversed as was but meet from one young man unto all the millions. And I looked swiftly upward through those 8 great miles of night unto that final light which did shine in the black heavens, so that my friend should know that I thought of him that was beyond my sight in that last moment. And it may be that the invisible millions that were far up in the night in the upper cities did take that also to be a meaning of farewell to themselves. for there came down out of the monstrous height a far, faint murmur of sound, as of a vague wind up in the night. Then I did lower the discos and turned me about, and I breasted strangely against the air clog, and stepped forward across the circle into the lonesomeness of the nightland. And I looked no more behind, for that which was my home did weaken my heart somewhat to behold, so that I had determination that I looked not again to my back for a great while. Yet about me as I went there was constant surging in the ether of the world, and it did tell unto me how that those, my people and kin, had continual mind of me, both in prayer and wishings, and in a perpetual watching. And the same gave to me a feeling as of being something companied. Yet in a time it came to me that this disturbance of the ether should tell to some evil force how that I was there abroad in the land. But how to stop this thing, who should have power? For of truth, had I been among them to make a full explaining of the danger, they had been yet powerless to cease, for but to have such great multitudes think upon one matter was to set a disturbance about as should be most clear to all. Now at the beginning I did walk outwards into the nightland, somewhat blindly and without sure direction, being intent only to put a good space to my back, that I might cure somewhat the ache which did weaken my heart at the first. But in a while I ceased somewhat from my over-swiftness, and did put thought to my going, and I came quickly to reason that I should try a new way through the land, for it might be that there was an over-watchfulness in that part which had been trod by the youths. And I began therewith to set this thought to the practice, and went not direct towards the north, but to the north and west, and so in the end to mean to circle around to the back of the northwest watcher, and thence to the north of the plain of blue fire, and afterwards as might be have a true and straight way to the north, and by this planning come a long way clear of that house of silence, which did put more fear upon me than all else that was horrid in the land. Yet, as all will see, this made to me a greater journey, though in verity it were better to go slowly and win to success than to make a greater haste towards destruction, which was indeed surely to be mine end did I not go warily. Now it may be thought upon with wonder that I did go so assuredly to the north, but I went this wise, part by an inward knowing, and part come upon by much latter studying within the pyramid of olden books, and by reasoning upon all things that I did observe, that had seemings of verity in them. And because of this constant searching upon one matter, I had come but a while back upon a little book of metal, very strange and ancient, that had lain forgot in a hid place in the great library through 10,100,000 years maybe, or less or more for all that I had knowing. And much that was writ in the book was common knowledge, and set mostly to the count of fairy tales and such like, even as we of this our age take not over surely of any belief in myths of olden times. Yet had I always much liking for such matters, perceiving behind that outer shell which did win always so much unbelief the kernel of ancient truths and happenings. And thus was it concerning this little book which I had made discovery of. For it told again that which oft I had heard, even as we in this age read of the deluge, how that once, in a time monstrous far back from that, but utter future to this age of ours, the world did break upwards in a vast earthquaking, that did rend the world for 1,000 miles. And there came a mighty chasm, so deep that none might see the bottom thereof, and there rushed therein an ocean, and the earth did burst afresh with a sound that did shake all the cities of the world, and a great mist lay upon the earth for many days, and there was a mighty rain. And indeed this was just so set in certain histories of the ancient world. Also there was made reference to it within some olden records, yet nowise to be taken with a serious mind to the seeming of the peoples of the mighty pyramid, but only as a quaint study for the students, and to be set out in little tales that did entertain the nurseries, or as it might be, wise men and the general. Yet there was this about that small and peculiar book, that it did speak of many of these things, as it were that it did quote from the pens of those that did have actual witness, and set all out with a strange gravity, that did cause one to consider it as meant to be indeed the tellings of truth, and to seem this wise to have great difference from all that I had read before concerning those matters. And there was further a part in the ending of the book that did seem to be rid of a time that came afterwards, maybe 100,000 and maybe 1,000,000 years, but who shall say? And therein it did tell of a huge and mighty valley that did come out of the west, towards the southeast, and made turning thence northwards, and was 1,000 miles both ways. And the sides thereof were 100 miles deep, and the sun did stand in the western end, and made a red gloom for 1,000 miles. And in the bottom there were great seas, and beasts strange and awesome, and very plentiful. Now this, as may be seen, was as the talk of romance, yet did I turn my wits to their natural end, and made thus plain of it. For in truth I to have something of belief, and it to seem to me that in a bygone eternity, when the world was yet light, as in my heart I know to have been indeed a thing of verity, there was a great and wondrous earthquake. And the earthquake did burst the world up, along a certain great curve where it had weakness, and there fell into the yawning furnace of the world one of the great oceans, and immediately made of itself steam, and so brake upwards again, and tore the earth mightily in its swift uprising. And thereafter there was a mist and confusion and rain upon the world, and indeed all very seemly put, and not to be taken as a light tale. Then in that ending of the book there was one that did write, having lived a vast later age, when the sun had come anigh to his dying, and the upward earth was grown quiet and cold, and not good to live upon. And in that time the mighty chasm had been calmed by the weight of an eternity, so that it was now a most deep and wondrous valley, that did hold seas, and great hills and mountains, and in it were great forests of kinds, and lands that were good and healthful, and places given over to fire, and to steamings and sulphur clouds, so that they held poisons that had ill for man. And great beasts were there down in that far depth that none might see ever save by a strong spy-glass. And such there were in the early world, and had now been bred in the ending, by those inward forces of nature which did make the valley a place of good warmth, so that there was, as it were, once more the primal world born to give new birth unto such olden monsters, and to others new and peculiar to that age and circumstance. And all this indeed did the book give also, but constrained and difficult to take clearly to the heart, and not like to the wise plain speech of the early tellings, so that I must even set it out here in mine own speech. And it did seem to me by my reading that man had come at one time to a great softness of heart and spirit through many ages of over-ease, but that the world had come to coldness and unfriendliness by reason of the sun's slow ceasing. And there was presently, in naturalness, a race upon the earth that were hardy and made to fight for their lives, and did perceive that the mighty valley that cut the world in twain was a place of warmth and life, and so did make to adventure their bodies down that wondrous height, and were many ages coming safe to the bottom, but did find safe places in the downward way where they built them houses, and made to live, and begot them children, and these grew up to that life of constant and great climbings, and of hard workings upon the road, which was the one intent of that people, so that the book did speak of them always as the road-makers. And thus did they make downwards through the long years and the ages, and many generations did live and die, and saw not the reaching of the road down into that great vale that lay so monstrous deep in the world. But in the end they did come there with the road, and they were very hardy, and they did fight with the monsters, and slay many. And they built them many cities, through great years in the mighty valley, and did make the road from city unto city, along that great valley, even unto the bight of the valley. And they found here a constant darkness and shadow, for that the sun could not make a shining around that great corner. Yet even here they ceased not to make the road, but took it around and a mighty way unto the north, passing it among strange fires and pits that burned from out of the earth. But there was presently such a power and horror of monsters and evil things in that valley of shadow, that the road-makers were made to go backwards into the red light which did fill the westward valley and came from that low sun. And they went back into their cities, and lived there mayhaps 100,000 years, and grew wise and cunning in all matters. And their wise people did make dealings and had experiment with those forces which are distasteful and harmful unto life. But they did this in ignorance, for all that they had much wisdom, thinking only to experiment, that they come to greater knowings. But they did open a way for those forces, and much harm and pity did come thereby. And then had all people to have regrets, yet too late. Now presently, when 100,000 years had gone, or it may be a greater space, there came slowly the utter twilight of the world, as the sun to die the more, so that presently it gave but an utter gloomy light. And there grew upon many of the peoples of the cities of the valley a strangeness and a wildness, so that strange things were done, that had been shameful to all in the light. And there were wanderings and consortings with strange outward beings, and presently many cities were attacked by monsters that did come from the west, and there was a pandemonium. Then was an age of sorrows and fightings, and hardenings of the spirit and of the heart, for all that were of good fibre, and this did breed a determined generation. And there grew up into the world a leader, and he took all the sound millions, and did make a mighty battle upon all foulness and upon all that did harm and trouble them, and they drove their enemies down the valley and up the valley, and did utterly scatter and put them to flight. Then did that man call all his peoples together, and did make it plain how that the darkness grew upon the world, and that the foul and dreadful powers abroad were like to be more horrid when a greater gloom came. And he put to them that they build a mighty refuge, and the peoples did acclaim, and lo, there was built presently a great house. But the great house was not proper, and that man did take all the peoples to wander, and they came to the bight, and there was built at last that great and mighty pyramid. Now this is the sense and telling of that book, but late had I read it, and talked somewhat of it with my dear friend, the Master Monstruaken. But not overmuch, for I had taken so sudden a mind to go, that all else had dropped from about me. Yet to us it did seem clear that there was no life in all the invisible upper world, and that surely that great road whereon the Silent Ones did walk must be that same road which the hardy peoples of that age did make. And it did seem wise to the Master Monstruaken and unto me that if any should find the Lesser Redoubt, they must surely do so somewhere within the mighty valley, but whether the road that led into the west, where was the place of the Ab-humans, should bring me to it, I had no knowing, nor whether it might lie on the northward way. And I, maybe, to wander 1,000 miles wrong, if in truth I were not into some dreadful trouble before. And indeed no reason of value was there to give me hope that the Lesser Pyramid lay either to the west or where the road went northward beyond the House of Silence. Yet I did so feel it to be somewhere to the north, that I had made a determination to search that way for a great distance the first. And if I could not come upon aught, then I should have sober thought that it did lie westward. But in the valley someways I had a feeling of assurance that it must be. for it was plain that the telling of the book was sound in its bottom sense, as might be seen, for how should any live in the utter bleak and deadly chill of the silent upper world that lay an 100 miles up in the night, hid and lost forever? And strange it is to think of those wondrous and mighty cliffs that girt us about, and yet were fast held from us in the dark, so that I had not known of them, save for the telling of that book. Though, in truth, it had been always supposed that we lived in a great deep of the world, but indeed it was rather held in belief that we abode in the bed of some ancient sea, that did surely slope gradual away from us, and not go up abrupt and savage. And here let me make so clear as I may that the general peoples had no clear thought upon any such matters, though there was something of it taught in the schools. Yet rather this and that, of diverse conclusions, as it might be thinkings of the teachers, after much study and some ponderings. For one man, having a lack of imagining, would scoff, and another, maybe, to take it very staidly, but some would build fancy upon the tellings of the records, and make foolish and fantastic that which had groundings in truth, and thus is it ever. But to the most peoples of the pyramid there was no deep conviction nor thought of any great hid world afar in the darkness, for they gave attention and belief only to that which lay to their view, nor could a great lot come to imagine that there had been ever any other condition. And to them it did seem right and meet that there should be strange things, and fires from the earth, and an ever-abiding night, and monsters and matters hid and tangled much in mystery. And very content were the most of them, though some had in them the yeast of imaginings, or the pimples of fancy upon them, and to these there seemed many possibilities, though the first to read out to sanity, and the second to expect and have speech towards much that was foolish or to no purpose. And of these vague believings of the peoples have I made hint before, and need not have much trouble to it now, save that with the children, as is ever the way, those olden tales had much believing, and the simplicity of the wise did mate with the beliefs of the young, and between them did lie the truth. And so did I make speed towards the north, having a strong surety in my heart and mind that there were but two ways to my search. For without of the valley, afar up in the dead lonesomeness of the hidden world, was a cold that was shapen ready to death, and a lacking, as I must believe, of the sweet needful air that yet did lie in plenty in that deep place of the earth, so that surely the mighty valley somewheres to hold that other redoubt. Yet, as I have said, I went not direct to my journey, but otherwise for those sound reasons which I did set down a time back. End of chapter 6. Chapter 7, Part 1 of The Nightland, by William Hope Hodgson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Nightland. Chapter 7. The Nightland, Part 1. Now, as I went towards the north and west, I steered me warily for a great while, that I come safe of that great watcher of the northwest. And as I made forward, I put thought to all matters which must concern me, so far as I had imagining to see. And first I did consider the speed that I should keep, and found presently that I did well to be moderate. For that I had before me a great and mighty journey, and indeed, who might speak knowingly of the end thereof? And another matter I did arrange, for I would make the times of my goings forward and the times of mine eatings and sleepings all to a wise and regular fashion, that thereby I might go a great way with the less harm to my body, so that I should be strong when the need did come for my strength. And I made in the end that I should eat and drink at every 6th hour, and at the 18th hour sleep me until the 24th. And by this means did I eat thrice in that time, and have 6 hours of sleep. And this seemed very good to me, and I did strive always to manage thus in all my great journeying in the Nightland. Yet, as may be supposed, there were times oft and many when I must watch without ceasing, and leave my slumber unto the future, for the land was full of grim and dreadful perils. And, as doth be human, I brake my rule straightway in the beginning, for I ceased not to walk for 21 hours, hiding and creeping as the need be in those places that were like to show me unto the watcher, and when I did think upon food it did sicken me, so that I would eat by and by as I made it within my thoughts. But when 21 hours had gone, I grew very weary and something faint, and was forced that I look about for some place where I might have rest. And in a little while I did see away off a small fire-hole, the like of which I had passed odd times even so early. And I made to come nigh to that part, for there would be warmth from the chill of the Nightland, and mayhaps a place dry and convenient to my slumber. And when I came anigh, I saw that it was a cheerful place, as it might be said, amid so much gloom, for the hole was but a few paces wide, and full of a dull glowing fire, that did bubble somewhat and throw off a small sulphur smoke. And I sat me down at no great way, and did place the discos on the rock to my hand. And I moved not a while, but was aweary, so that I had not the courage to eat neither to drink, but must turn me and look back to the mighty pyramid. And in truth, though I had come a very good space, yet was I so anigh to it that I was both cheered and put out of heart, for it did seem close upon me by reason of its greatness, so that I, who had journeyed a hard and weariful way, was shaken with the greatness of the task that was upon me. Yet was this but one side of my heart, for it was good to feel the nearness of my mighty home, and I knew that there did countless millions make watch upon me as I sat, yet did I make no sign, for it is not meet to make a constant farewell, but to go. Yet was it very strange to be thus near, and to show such behaviour as were proper to one afar from all humanity. But so it was that I ordered my ways, for it did seem proper to me. Yet was I happy to know that the dear Master Monstruaken must, time and oft, have spied upon me through the great spy-glass, and mayhaps did watch me in that moment. And it grew in me that I did act weakly to hold off from mine victuals, and showed foolishness before my kind friend afar. And I did ope my scrip, and take therefrom 3 tablets, the which I chewed and did eat. For this was a strong food, treated that it had but small bulk. Yet were they not filling to the belly, and I made that I would drink well, that I might feel that something was therein. And to this end I shook from a strong and especial tube a dust, and I caught the dust within a little cup, and the air did make an action upon that dust, as it were of chemistry, and the dust did boil and make a fizzing in the cup, and rose up and filled it with a liquid that was of simple water, yet very strange to see come that way, but ordinary after a time. And in this way, as might be seen, I had such food and drink in but a little scrip, that might keep life within me for a great time. Yet was it a way of discomfort, and lacking to the mouth and to the belly, but a sufficient thing unto the need of the body, and a good matter for a thankful heart, in that dark and hungry land. Now when I had eaten, I did go over in their order those things which I did carry, for there was, beside the discos and that scrip of food, a pouch that did contain matters various. And these I did look into, and afterward did take out a small compass that I had been given by the Master Monstruaken, so that I might find of its workings without the great redoubt. And he had said unto me that it might be that I should pass far off into the Nightland, and lose the mighty pyramid amid so great a country and so plentiful a darkness. Then, perchance, if that ancient principle did still lurk within the machine, though turned no more to the north, but unto the pyramid, then should it guide my feet homeward out of the everlasting night, and thus have once more that ancient use which, as I do know, is common unto this age. And this was a very cunning thing to have with me, if but it held service to the earth current, and a rare thing, which the master Monstruaken did make with his own hands and much skill and pains from an olden one that had place within the great museum, and concerning which I have told somewhat before this place. And I set the thing upon the ground, but it had no certain way with it, but did spin and waver constantly, and this I made to consider, and remembered that I was yet above that part where afar in the earth did spread the greatness of the underground fields, and I was happily but a little way off from the crack, though a mighty way above. And it pleasured me to wonder whether the dear Master Monstruaken did behold how that I made test with the compass, for the light was good from the fire-hole, and the great spy-glass had a great strength. Yet had I no certainty, for as I did know from much watchings there was no surety in the searching of the land by the glass. For there was oft plainness where you did think surely none should see, and anon a dullness where might be thought that the sight went gaily. And this may be plain to all, for the wavering of the lights from the strange fires was not to be accounted to rule, but made a light here and a darkness there, and then did change about oddly. Moreover, there were smokes and mists that did come upwards from the earth, in this place and in that, and had somewhiles a greatness, but oft were small and did lurk low, and had no power but to confuse the sight. And presently I did put by the compass in my pouch, and made to compose myself unto sleep. But here would I now set down how that, in the end, after I had gone many days' journeyings outward from the mighty pyramid, I did indeed find it to draw the northward part of the needle unto it, and this was a comfort and a pleasure to my spirit. Moreover, if ever I did get back, as I did think, it would be a matter for great interest unto the Master Monstruaken, yet in verity were there other matters that should hold him more, for he was right human, as all should know. And moreover, concerning this same compass, I did find a fresh thing. For after a yet greater time, as I shall set out in a due place, if I do but remember, which doubt is ever my fear to fret me, I came a mighty way from the redoubt, and lo, fearing that I might indeed lose that, my great home in the darkness of the world, I did pull out that strange wonder of the needle, that I might have comfort by its homeward pointing. And I did discover a new power in the night, for the machine did point no more directwards unto the great redoubt, but was a point unto the westwards, so that I had knowledge that some great power afar in the darkness of the world did sway upon it. And I had a childlike wonder that this might be in truth that same power of the north, of which the books and my memory dreams did tell. And indeed no doubt should there be upon this matter, yet who might not have doubt in that time, that they should perceive after an eternity that ancient northward force swaying that small servant unto an olden obedience? And it was, as it were, a revealing unto me, how that to know within the brain is one matter, but to have knowledge within the heart is another. For I had always known concerning this northward force, but yet had not known with the true meaning of knowledge. And yet one other matter there was to cause doubt, at that moment of this new knowing. For it came to me that maybe the power of that lesser redoubt did begin to act upon the machine, even as the earth current of the great pyramid did hold yet a strong drawing upon the needle, and were this so, then did I not surely begin to stand anigh unto my journey's end, for that less power of the lesser redoubt could have no impudence to pull, save that I had come to a closeness with it. Yet in truth, as I do now have knowledge, it was the north that drew, and I do seem to make a great telling about this little matter, but how else shall I show to you mine inward mind, and the lack of knowledge, and likewise the peculiar knowings that did go to the making of that time and the peoples thereof, which is but to say the same thing twice over. And now, as I did say, I made to compose myself for sleep, and to this end I took a cloak matter which did cross my shoulder and hip, and wrapped it about me, and lay down there in the darkness of the night, by that strange fire-hole. and I laid the discus beside me, within the cloak, for it was indeed my companion and friend in bitter need, so that I had pleasure to feel the strange thing anigh to me. And as I did lie there, in those moments that do drowse the soul, as it were that they do proceed as breath out of the mouth of sleep, I had a half knowing that the ether did surge about me. And I doubt not but that there had watched my every doing many of the millions, and had been humanly stirred at my commending of my spirit unto sleep, and thus did shake the ether of the world about me with their unity of sympathy. And mayhaps I had some little knowing of this thing as I did pass, drowsy, into slumber. And it is surely like that I slept the better for it. Moreover, I was wondrous tired and worn, and thus did sleep very strong and heavy. Yet I mind me that my last dim thinkings were upon that sweet maid I did go to find. And in slumber did I have speech with her in dreams, and a strange happiness about me, and all seeming to be touched by fairy light, and freed from the sorrow of life. And it was from a sweet and lovely sleeping such as this that I was waked suddenly by a great and mighty sound, and I came instant to a possessing of my senses, and I knew that the mighty voice of the home call did go howling across the night. And swift and silent I slid the cloak from about me and took the haft of that wondrous discos into mine hand. And I did look towards the pyramid quickly for a message, for I had a sure knowledge that there had a great need arisen, and that some terror came towards me out of the dark, else they had never walked all the nightland to a knowing that an human was abroad out of the mighty refuge. And even as I did peer towards the great redoubt, I could not abide to keep my gaze entire that way, but did take a large and fearful look all about me, yet could make to see nothing, and so did stare, eager and anxious, afar into the upper blackness of the night, where did shine that final light of the tower of observation, and the same while crouched and holding the discus, and making to glance across my shoulders, and to watch for the message, and all in the same moment. And then, afar upwards in the prodigious height, I did see the great and bright and quick darting flashes of a strange green fire, and did know that they spelled to me in the set speech a swift warning that a grey monster that was a great grey man had made scent of me in the dark, and was even in that moment of time crawling towards me through the low moss bushes that lay off beyond the fire-hole to my back. And the message was sharp, and bade me to leap into the bushes unto my left, and to hide there, so that I might chance to take the thing to an advantage. And as may be thought, they had scarce flashed the tale unto me, but I was gone in among the shadows of a clump of the moss-bush that did grow anigh, and I sweat with a strange terror, and a cold and excited shaking of the heart, yet was my spirit set strong to conquer. And lo, as I did crouch there hidden, I saw something come very quiet out of the bushes that did grow beyond the fire-hole, and it was great and crept, and was no ways coloured but by greyness in all its parts, and the glare from the fire-hole did seem to trouble it, so that it looked, laying its head to the ground and spying along the earth in a strange and brutish fashion, that it might oversee the glare of the fire-hole. Yet I doubt that it saw beyond the fire with plainness, for in a moment it crept swift in among the bushes again and came out towards the edge of the fire-hole in another place, and this it did thrice unto my left and thrice unto my right, and every time did lay its head to the earth and spy along, and did hunch its shoulders and thrust forward the jaw horridly and turn the neck, as a very nasty beast might go wanton. Now, as you may think, this manner of the beast-man did shake my courage mightily, for I did think each time that it did go inward among the moss-bushes that it had made discovery of me and would make to take me in the back, from out of the dark of the bushes, and this was an uncomfortable thing to consider, as others might think also, had any been there in the bush with me. And then, in truth, did that same swift sense of mine hearing prove helpful to my saving. For, behold, the thing did go back into the moss-bushes, after that last coming out, and did seem to make as it had made a failing to discover me, and had no further intent save to return unto the night. And I had this thought truly in mine heart, and for maybe a minute, and then low within my soul a voice did speak plain, and did warn me that the thing did make a great compass among the moss-bushes about the fire-hole, having made discovery of me, and it did go warily to take me in the back from the other side. Now when I heard this voice speak within my spirit, I had knowledge that the dear Master Monstruaken made watch from the tower of observation, and did send the speech with his brain elements, having in mind that I had the night hearing. And I trusted the speech, for in the same moment of time there did beat all about me in the night the solemn throb of the master-word, as that it had been added with speed to give instant assurance. And I leapt quick from that clump of the moss-bush unto another, and crouched, and made a watch all about me, and kept the ears of my spirit open, knowing that the Master Monstruaken did also watch all for me. And suddenly I saw a little moving of a bush that grew to the back of those bushes in which I had been hid, and there came out of the bush that moved a great grey hand, and moved the moss of the clump where I had been, as it were that something peered out of the moving bush. And there followed the great grey head of the grey man, and the head went into the clump of the moss-bush where I had been. And I knew that I must strike now, and I leapt and smote with the discus, and the thing fell upon its side, and the great grey legs came out of the hither bushes, and twitched and grew upwards, but the head remained in the bush where I had been hid. And I stood away from the thing whilst it died, and in mine hand the discos did spin and send forth fire, as it were that it did live and did know that it had slain a great and horrid monster. And presently the grey man was dead, and I went away from those bushes unto the far side of the fire-hole. And I stood with the discos held high and spinning and sending out fire, that they within the mighty pyramid might know that I had slain the beast-man, for it might be that it lay too much in the shadow for them to look upon. But the Master Monstruaken spoke not again to me, for indeed it was not meet to do so, except it might save me from a sure danger. For, as you may know from my past tellings, there were powers of the Nightland that did hearken unto such matters, and it was like enough that there had been overmuch done, even thus for my further safety. Yet the thing could not be helped. And now that I was a little calmed and eased from my fear, I could know that all that the ether of the night was disturbed by the gladness of the millions within the great redoubt, so that it was plain how great a multitude had given note unto the fight, and their hearts to beat in sweet sympathy and natural fear, so that I did feel companied and befriended, though, as it may be thought, something shaken yet about the heart. Now in a little time I did gather unto me my wits and had myself to order, and I looked to see how the hours did go, and I found that I had surely slumbered through 10 hours. And I reproached myself, for indeed I had slept over sound by reason of my having lacked a regular way and time, as I had with the proper wisdom made to be my rule. And I resolved that I should obey the wit of my reason in all the future time, and make to eat and rest in due season, as you will wot that I did before intend. Then with a self-reproachful heart I went around the small fire-hole, and caught up my cloak and other matters, and I turned me towards the great pyramid, and did look once upwards along all the great slope, where it did go measureless into the far blackness of the everlasting night, and I made no salutation, for I had so resolved, as you will know. Moreover, I desired not to call forth any unneedful disturbance of the ether of the world, which indeed must be did I make to stir the emotions of the millions. And I turned me then away, and went off into the night, going swift and cautious, and bearing the discos cunningly, and almost as it were with a love for that strange and wondrous weapon that had so befriended me, and slain the foul grey man with one stroke. And I had a feeling that it did know me, and had a comradeship for me, and I doubt none will understand this, save, it might be, they of the olden days that did carry one strong sword always. Yet was the discourse more than the sword, for it did in truth seem to live with the fire and the flame of the earth-current that did beat within it. And it was well acknowledged within the great redoubt that none might touch the discourse of another, for that the thing went crustily, as it might be said, in the hands of a stranger. And if any made foolishness of this knowledge, and did persist much to such an handling or making to use, the same would presently act clumsy with the weapon, and come to an hurt, and this was a sure thing, and had been known maybe an 100,000 years, or perchance a greater time. And by this it doth seem wise to believe that there did grow always an affinity between the nature of the man, which doth as ever include the woman, and the discourse that he did use in his practice, and because of this known thing, and that the place would elsewise be lumbered with olden weapons of those that did die, it was a law and usage that there was placed within the dead the discourse of the dead, there upon the last road in the country of silence, and was thus made to give back unto the earth-current the power that did lie in it. And this doth seem to a careless thinker as it were that I told once again those olden customs of the ancient folk, but this is otherwise, and had a sound reason to it. Yet if you do so believe, I doubt not but that a right human sentiment was something at the bottom, which is proper. For it is meet that love should mate with wisdom to mother comfort in our sorrows, and it is a warm thing to do aught for our dead, and none may say nay to this. Now as I did go onwards into the nightland, looking ever to this shadow and to that, it may be conceived how my heart would stir with swift fear at this and that my body would oft quiver to leap aside, and as swift discover that naught assailed. And so did I go forward, and always with imaginings and wonders concerning what manner of uncouth being or brute might come out of the darkness all about. Yet in all that time there was a certain proudness of the heart, that I did come safe out of the power of the grey man, and did surely slay him. But truly it were well that the praise be considered, and not overmuch given unto me, for I had died as I slept, but that they of the great redoubt had made a watch over me and waked me unto my saving. Now presently, as I walked, I grew something faint, and had knowledge that I did foolishly, for indeed I should have eat after my fight, yet may I be forgiven for this forgetting, in that I had been much shaked and put about. And I sat me down in a little clear place among the bushes, and did eat 3 of the tablets, and did once more shake forth the dust that did turn in the air to a natural water by a proper and natural chemistry of these matters. And after I had eat, I sat a little while and did think, and did look upwards at the great slope of the pyramid in the night. And all the time did I listen with mine ears and with my spirit, and kept the discourse across my knees, and looked this way and that, very frequent, but nothing came anigh. And so I rose presently and went onwards, and walked for 6 hours towards the north and the west. And I made much to the west for a little, that I might come clear of the north-west watcher. Yet after a space I made to do foolishly, for I changed my mind about and kept something more towards the north, so that I should have a surer sight of that monster. And this was, in truth, a rash and naughty thing to consider, for if I were but seen, then should that grim brute make a signal unto the evil powers, and I be met swiftly with destruction. But surely the heart is a strange and wayward thing, and given to quick fears, and immediately unto great and uncountable rashnesses. And so I did go forward unwisely to the northward of a safe and proper going. And it may be that an influence was upon me and drew me thatwards, but who shall say? Now a great time I walked, and made a halt upon every 6th hour, and did eat and drink and look a little unto the monstrous towering of the great redoubt, and afterwards make strong mine heart and go forward again. And always I did go warily, and chiefly among the low moss bush, but sometimes out upon stony ground, and oft across places where sulphur did puff somewhat from the ground in a low smoke, very strong in the nostrils, and not liked inwardly. And as I made onwards I looked always to my right and to my left, and anon to the rear, yet made a constant observation of the mighty watcher that I did begin to draw nigh unto. And oft did I stoop to crawl, and my hands did bleed somewhat, but after I was troubled so, I put on the great gloves that made complete the grey armour, and so was shod proper to such journeying. And presently, when 18 hours did have passed since that my sudden awakening to the peril of the grey man, I did search about for a place to slumber, for I would keep wisely unto my ruling, and go not over long lacking of sleep. And by this planning I should be the less like to sleep over sound, and so should set my spirit to listen whilst I did sleep, and by so much as my spirit should serve me with faith should I have safety. And this thing is plain, and wants not more to the saying thereof. And I came presently unto a sudden place where the land did go downwards brokenly, as that it had been burst a great while gone by the inward fires. And I looked downwards over the edge of that place, and went round about it, and did see presently a ledge upon the far side, that was difficult to come upon, yet a place of some little safety to any that might go down to it, for it was awkward to see, and did any monster seek to come at me, I should have chance of warning, and might go downwards a greater way in time to my salvation. And by this determination I abode, and came down to that place with labour, but was cheerful of heart that I had found so sure a shelter. And I eat my 3 tablets, and drank the water that I did get from the powder, and so made to compose my body to sleep. Yet at this time a thought did come to me, and I made calculation afresh, and laughed somewhat at that my poor counting. For indeed I had thought to eat but thrice in the 24 hours, yet by my arranging I was made indeed to eat 4 times, as you shall see immediately by a little thought. And this thing came more strong upon my spirit than any might think, for I did eat overmuch for the lasting of the food, though in verity it was but little to my belly, as you must all think, and have sympathy for my discomfort. And I considered a little, and had determined that I should afterwards in my journeying eat but 2 of the tablets to my meal, and this was a wise thought, and like much wisdom, a discomposing thing. And so it was, and I set it down that you may know the arranging of my ways at that time. Now in all this while of meditation I had been setting my cloak about me, and was fast set to my sleeping, for I had walked a weary way. And I lay me down upon my left side with my back to the rock, which did overhang me something above, so that I was contented to feel hid from things that might pass by in the night. And I had the cloak about me, and the discus close against my breast, within the cloak, and my head upon my pouch and upon my scrip. And as I lay thus a moment easeful, I could see that so mighty was the uprising of the great pyramid, that it was not hid from me even thus, but did stand upward into the night, and did shine, and was plain to be seen above the further edge of that deep place where I did lie. And I fell upon sleep, looking upward at that final light, where, as might be, the master Monstruacan did bend the great spyglass upon my lonesomeness, as I lay there upon the ledge. And this was a thought of sweet comfort upon which to slumber, the which I did, but my spirit lay wakeful within my breast, and did listen through the night, and harked for all evil matters, and things that did make to come anigh. But also my spirit did whisper unto Nanni as I went into sleep, and so passed I into dreams. Now it may be thought that I did act with a strange valiance, in that I composed my body so properly to slumber, and with but a little trouble of the heart concerning the coming of monsters. And in truth this hath seemed somewhat so to me, thinking since that time. But I do but set the thing that is truth, and make not to labour to an illusion of truth, and so must tell much that doth seem improper to the reality. Yet must all bear with me, and have understanding of the hardness of setting forth with true seeming the honesty of truth, which in verity is better served oft times by timely and cunning lies, and so shall you understand this matter so well as I. And presently my spirit waked me there in the half dark of the night, and I looked swift about me and upwards, and saw nothing to fear. Then did I peer at my dial, and made to discover that I had slept full over 6 quiet hours, and by this I knew the reason of mine awaking, for it was so great impressed upon me by mine inward sense and being. And this you shall understand someways, who have thought, ere sleep, to wake to a certain time of the morning, and by understanding shall you believe and give me all your kind harking and human sympathy. And I made to have a smartness of going, which is ever hard to the newly waked. And I eat 2 tablets, and while my belly did cry out for an wholesome and proper filling, but I drank some of the water, and so did ease somewhat of my hunger. Then did I wind my cloak to its shape, and put upon me my gear, which was the scrip and the pouch and the discos to my hip, and I clomb out from that place of rest. Yet before I did come rightly up into the open, I peered about, and made some surety that no evil brute was anigh. And then I gat me out, and stood upon my feet, and looked for a little upwards at the mighty slope of the great redoubt, which did seem yet very nigh unto me, by reason of it being so monstrous in bigness. And I wondered whether in that moment the master Monsterwaken did look down upon me with the great spy-glass. And afterwards I turned away swiftly, and went on into the Nightland, for it did always make me shaken with lonesomeness to look upon my great home. And so I did go forward with a strong and uncaring stride, but grew presently to quietness, and to have back the proper caution of my going. Yet had I not gone all foolishly, for I had taken the discus from my hip ere this, so that I possessed it handily. Now there is one matter which shall seem but a small and natural occurring unto you, yet was strong upon me in that time, and this thing was that I did begin now to see the Nightland from the new outlooking of my distance from the mighty pyramid. And it was as that a man of this day did go from the earth to travel among the stars, and lo should he not find them to shift upon his vision, so that the Great Bear and this and that shaping of the star clusterings should make a new order, as he did wander onwards, and so should he find that there was naught that was truly fixed, as he did before then think, but all to alter according unto the place whence the looking. And this thing shall be plain unto you, though no thought be put to the matter, for it is of an evident verity that doth need not argument to expound. And so shall you have memory of me, there a wander among those strange shapings and wonders of that grim land, the which I had never but supposed to seem but as memory did retain them, from the lookings of all my life within the great redoubt. And so it was, and ever there did this thing and that open out to a new view, and the Nightland take to itself a constant new aspect to mine eyes, which had never until that time had but the one fixed vision of the same. And you shall understand with me how that when about the 14th hour of that day's travel I did draw very nigh unto the monstrous Watcher of the Northwest, it did seem so utter strange from this fresh aspect, that I had been like to think that I did see a new monster. For in truth, when I did come at last to creep to within a mile of it among the low moss-bushes, I was confounded that the mighty chin did come forward towards the great redoubt, even as the upward part of a vast cliff, which the sea doth make hollow about the bottom. For it did hang out into the air above the glare of the fire from the red pit, as it had been a thing of rock, all scored and beweathered, and dull red, and seeming burned and blasted by reason of the bloody shine that beat upward from the deep of the red pit. And by the way in which I do tell upon it, you shall know that I did surely view it something from the side at this immediate time, for in truth it was then that I did draw the nearer, and moreover I was the more astonished at this viewing than I had been to the front, for it was so utter strange, and shapen so different from the brute that did hang in my memory. And a great time I did lie there upon my belly, and shaken by a fear of the beast, yet emboldened, as you may conceive, by having come to the side, and being hopeful in my heart that I was very secure within so great a shadow and the thick sheltering of the moss bushes. And surely it was that I did creep more nigh, the while that I did look, for presently I had a very plain seeing of the great monster, and did know where I had gotten to, and thereby did acknowledge unto myself that this was an utter foolishness, and like, for all that any might say, to lead unto destruction. Yet, as all must know, there was the first fear, and the ceasing of this fear, as I did wot that I was so little a thing to heed out there in the shadows, and presently a gaining of courage, and the prick of my being that did crave to see clear this exceeding wonder. And so was I come close, more or less, having gone far upon my hands and knees, yet sometimes to pause, but afterwards on again. Now by this nearness I was the more truly able to perceive how that the bulk of the watcher did rise up into the night like a hill, and the colour was mostly black, save and indeed where it did face to the red shine of the pit, and concerning this I have done telling. And so did I lie there and stare a great while, parting a small hole in the moss bushes that I might spy through the same. And the thing was squat there, and might have root within the earth, so it did seem to mine imaginings, as I did stare with a dumb wonder. And there were monstrous warts upon the thing, and indents, and a mighty ruggedness and lumpings, as it were that it did be pimpled with great boulders that were inbred within that monstrous hide. And where the shine from the pit of red fire did strike upon these, they did stand out into the darkness away from the skin, as you of this age shall see mountains of the moon catch a bright fire from the sun, and show plain upon the night of the moon. Now as I have set down, I did lie there and look a great while, and it came presently to me that there was unease within the mighty pyramid among the millions, for I did feel the ether of the world to be disturbed by their distress, and so had a knowing that they had a cunning wareness concerning the place where I did hide among the moss bushes. And the thrilling in the night did bring a wisdom into my head, for in verity, as I have said, this was a foolish matter that I was upon. And I get a thought that the watcher might have an awareness of the trouble of the multitudes, and indeed for all that I did know it had a full knowledge of all my wandering, though concerning this I did think otherwise truly in my heart, as is a most human and proper way to make comfortable the spirit, where doubt can have no ease from reason. And I made that I go backwards to a good distance from the watcher, and go forward again upon my journeying, if but that I come safe from so unwise an adventuring. And as I did begin to return, it was to me as that all my senses were newly awake, for I had a sudden knowing that I was within the atmosphere, should I not call it, of the monster. And I get an abrupt and horrid shaking of the spirit, for I did feel in verity that my soul had come too anigh, and that the beast had a sure knowledge concerning me, yet did make to my destruction with no haste, but after that way and fashion that did seem proper unto it. And this feeling you shall understand the better, maybe, when I do tell that it was to me as that the air all about me was full of a quiet and steadfast life and keen intelligence that I did believe to come forth from the watcher on every side, so that I did feel as one already within the gaze of some great and evil power. Yet though I had a great terror upon me, I made no foolish haste, but commanded my soul to courage, and put a guard upon my way of going, and so made a very quiet journey for maybe 2 full miles, and afterwards did allow myself something more of haste, for I was now grown easier in my spirit, and felt apart from the spirit of the great watcher. And after a longer while I did leave that hill of watchfulness to my rear, and was gone onward into the night, yet as may be known with a vague unease and trouble to my heart, and a swift and frequent turning to learn surely that no evil thing came after me. For, as you may know, I could nowise have forgetting concerning that great quiet life which did seem to be living in all the air around that mighty bulk. For it had been all about me in the night, as I have told, and I to feel that I had been surely discovered. And thus shall you know how shaken was my spirit in verity. Now presently, at the 18th hour of that day's travel, I ceased from my journeying, that I might eat and drink, and I did sit a little while and looked back upon the strange and monstrous thing which I had come beyond. And the great humped back and vast shoulders of the watching thing rose up into the night, black and cumbrous against the red shine of the pit. And thus, as you shall think, had that brute looked always unto the mighty pyramid through eternity, and did cease not from watching, and was steadfast and silent and alone, and none did understand. And after I had eat and drunk some of the water, I went onward for a full matter of 6 hours more, being minded to have no sleep until I had put a great way between me and the watcher. And in this part of my journey did I come to the place where the Silent Ones kill, as it was named in the maps. And I observed a very wondrous caution, and went away from it a little unto the north, where I did see at a distance the shinings of the fire-holes, the which did promise me warmth through my slumber. And here you must know that the place where the Silent Ones kill was an utter bare place, where all did seem of rock, and no bush did seem to grow thereon, so that a man might not come to any hiding, though in truth there might be some hole here or there, yet was none shown in any map within the pyramid, neither did there seem to be any such to me, as I did creep there among the moss bushes to the northward of the place, and look constant and fearful towards it, so that I should see quickly whether any Silent One did move across all the grey quiet of that rocky plain. And concerning this same place where the Silent Ones kill, it were well to make an explanation how that there was always a little and far spreaded light over all that lonesomeness, and the light was something grey seeming, as it were that a lichen might grow upon the rocks, and send out a little uncomfortable glowing, even as certain matters do in these times, if you do but know the place and the time to seek them. Yet was the light exceeding weak, and very cold and dismal, and did seem truly to show naught with a sureness, so that it did appear to the eye, if one did look fixedly, that there were shadows that did move here and there, as it were of silent beings, and none might know in truth whether this shaping of the greyness was to the clouding of the reason, or that the eye did see of reality. Yet if one did look with the great spy-glass, then might there be some surety and plainness, and likewise was it so if one did have come sufficient anigh to that uncomfortable place, even as I then did be. And so you shall conceive how that I did slide very quiet from bush unto bush, for I had alway in all my life had a very dread fear of this place, and oft did I peer out into the dim grey light of the lonesome plain unto my left, and would think sometimes to perceive the shapes of the Silent Ones stood vague and watchful, yet on the instant to see nothing. And thus I did go onward, and came presently to a part where the grey plain did stretch out a bareness into the nightland to my front, so that my way ended, unless I did make a long passing round about. And I sat there among the moss bushes, and did consider, and looked out cunningly through a spy-hole of the bush in which I did sit. And I perceived that the part of the plain which did jut bareness into the land before me had no greatness of size, but might be passed swiftly in but a little running, and this thing should save me a wearisome going round, so that I made to consider it with a serious mind, and all the time did I search the bare greyness before me, and saw presently that it was surely empty. And I made to adventure myself across, running very swift, until I had come to the far side. And lo, as I did go to rise up out of the bush, mine eyes were opened as it were, and I saw that there was something amid the constant greyness, and I fell quickly into the bush, and did sweat very chill, but yet did haste to look. And I saw now that there were in truth matters that did show vague upon that part of the plain that was before me, and I did peer very constant and anxious, and behold I saw that there was facing me a great line of quiet and lofty figures, shrouded unto their feet, and they moved not, neither made they any sound, but stood there amid the greyness, and did seem to make an unending watch upon me, so that my heart went into weakness, and I did feel that there was no power of the moss bushes to hide me, for in verity they that stood so silent were certain of the Silent Ones, and I was very nigh to the place of destruction. End of chapter 7, part 1.